So I don't have a swivel chair. It'd work a lot better if I did. My name's Scott Manley Hadley. This is Triumph of the Now TV, hashtag TOTNTV. This episode is all about England. It's mine and it owes me a living, baby. I'll be speaking here to Chris Nelson, who performs as the drag act Sue Gives a Fuck. We'll also be speaking to Gavin, the writer and musician. It's a novelist who wrote Midland and Novel Out of Time. We're speaking about England, about London centricism, about Scottish English cultural identities and the way they differ, about how property prices have been shifting community spaces out of the centre of cities. Chris talks at length about the problems of online communities and how people require concrete spaces in order to flourish in many ways. It's really interesting stuff, very timely, very relevant from both of these speakers. Lots about Brexit, lots about money, lots about interesting things. Enjoy. Bye.
The pink pound is a thing, but it's not the biggest pound. And London now is the biggest pound. So, drag goes slightly further out. And, that's goes both ways. There are drag bars opening in little small towns, which is great and a new thing, but they are closing in the big towns. It's a swap, and one result of that is that you get a lot more traditional Soho-y basic style drag, because the kind of like the big towns is where the sort of experimental weird stuff happens, and those are the ones that shut. But why is it important? I guess, like, in an age of Grindr and Tinder and Scruff and all these things, it's very easy to fabricate a community without physical space. And then everything becomes transactional. You can make friends through Tinder, and then there are Tinder has a friends thing. You can find people for nights out or whatever rather than sex or dating, and there are friend ones. But then everything becomes contractual between individuals, and there's no collective. And where there's no collective, I guess everyone becomes mainstreamed because there's no way for people to sort of identify with a group and then that become a counterculture. I guess. But having said that, there's always a massive problem with trying to preserve those spaces as well, because people who try to stop the gentrification process in Soho, and they're like, Soho was this sort of seedy underground interesting place, what we must do is preserve that. No. Once sort of the National Trust is involved, it's not seedy and underground. So that's always a danger. And actually, I think maybe a sort of insurmountable one. I guess the only way to get past it is to sort of somehow get around this money thing. I guess the only way to do that is people have to literally give up money and property that they have. That's not going to happen, is it? So I guess we'll just move to small towns and do Shirley Bassey and a Mince joke.
Do you think London centricism is bad generally? Or appropriate given population disparity?
I don't know. I mean, I think this is a question that seems so kind of, or I should probably say the ways in which that question is loaded have become much more kind of visible and kind of noticeable in some ways, or not noticeable, kind of apparent in the context of Brexit, right? And it just seemed like so many kind of problems with kind of London centricism sort of came to the fore because of the Brexit vote, and how kind of various elements of kind of leave or remain were then kind of construed and perceived, and kind of ways in which there is, it seemed to me kind of when there was that kind of London kind of is going to become its own own space, and we all kind of want to stay, and the rest of it just seemed to me so kind of, okay, hang on. There's really complex reasons why all sorts of different people voted to remain and voted to leave. That isn't just kind of a kind of progressive versus the others vote, and it seems to me that kind of like there is a problem in terms of sometimes kind of discourse that arises, political discourse only arising in the kind of like there's London and there's the rest of the UK, because it kind of fails to understand those complexities and how we arrived at that vote.
Yeah. What is England's cultural identity, and does it have one?
I don't know, because I mean so much of kind of what English kind of cultural identity is interlocked with a kind of a history of world violence, kind of, and there's ways in which kind of I would be reluctant, I think, to sort of be able to kind of pin down a kind of English cultural identity that I don't know. I don't think there is a kind of single cultural identity. I don't know if I would want there to be. I don't know if I'd want there to be a kind of cultural identity based in kind of England as a nation.
No.
Because, not that I would want there to be, wouldn't want there to be, but it just seems that, I don't know.
I mean, I feel the only time that anyone's ever tried to evoke one, it's been for very divisive purposes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just always seems to me that kind of any kind of attempt to kind of formulate an English cultural identity or England's cultural identity has contains some kind of form of violence to something that is then cast as being kind of not part of England,
Yeah.
It just seems to be that is the kind of.
But is that the English cultural identity?
Maybe that's the English cultural identity, that violence.
Things like Scottish nationalism isn't inherently gingers only kind of thing, is it?
Yeah, it seems like, I think Scotland has a kind of such a different, way of kind of relating to Europe, say, as we're kind of, seeing kind of, painfully now as well. But that goes back so far, in terms of kind of Scotland's relationship with France and the kind of deeper history of that. And again, that's something that I just think that England often sort of forgets. It's this kind of notion that there's England, and then like Scotland and Ireland are sort of attached to that somehow, and it completely kind of is kind of ignorant of those different relationships that have had so.
Yeah, I think often I find the way English people talk about things like the Scottish and Welsh parliaments, there's a tone of contempt.
Yeah, exactly.